All right.
I haven't talked to you forever, Rocco.
I know, it's like been at least a few minutes. And we are live for another Friday Night Live with Colin and Dusky.
He's here! The crowd's going wild.
Uh-oh, we lost Colin already.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Too much celebrity here.
Oh, well. He'll be back. He doesn't have the best connection. So, what's happening, dude?
Well,
what have you been doing
killed
tonight?
it in Rocket League just a minute ago. You know?
That was so much fun, man.
People were going crazy over how good we were.
They were.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe how talented we really were.
You know Michael, who joined, he is Platinum 3, he's rated.
Yep.
He was watching us.
He was watching. That just shows you how good we really were.
He was trying to learn.
Nick, what's going on, man? I actually then played a few games with him after that.
I can hear you going in and out, Colin. You're kind of phasing in and out.
Yeah, see, I don't hear Colin at all. I don't even see Colin.
Oh, really? He's on my screen.
Ew,
you got to upgrade that 56K service you got.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. My internet connection is fine. I don't know what's going on, but there he is.
Back.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, we had a good Rocket League run. We completed a podcast recording. It is exciting.
It's not edited yet.
No. But it's done, and it's a masterpiece. Probably one of the best we've ever done.
It's a good thing that we have editing abilities. That's all I'm saying.
Our editing's the best in the world.
Well, I don't know about the editing is the best, but good thing we have editing.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, we lost him.
Oh, no.
Oh, noes.
Well,
it's all
they'll
good,
be
man.
back. So, yeah, outside of that, I've been dabbling in some other games in Linux. I know you don't dabble outside of Rocket League, but did a video on the Valley.
The Valley, what is
Valley? Valley is it's an indie game, but very beautiful graphics, gorgeous soundtrack, but it's not a lot of action in it. It's more of a story-driven game out there, and it's a very nice game. I had a lot of fun. I had my brother on, and we kind of did an hour and 17 minutes of commentary, which he had some really funny lines in there, but it's an interesting game. There's just not a lot of action. You actually have the power of life and death, but you're using it in trees and nature and things and bringing things back, but not necessarily a action game where you're going around, destroying monsters or anything like that. So it's a little different take, but it was a lot of fun. Kind of a cool game.
Nice.
Runs fantastic in Linux. Beautiful.
No talks, no box, right?
That's right, man. Well, apparently only I live by that motto.
Well, yeah, sort of.
Have I got any volume, guys? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? As soon as you went live, everything went frozen. As soon as you went live. I don't know what it is. It must be my internet here, I think.
It is.
I'm on wired now.
It doesn't sound like the greatest connection, Colin, but we can still hear you, so keep going, man.
What have you been up to, Colin?
Oh, that's cool. No worries. So you guys... well, I've been installing Solus on some work colleagues' computers Solus. Because one of them got hacked the other day. So one of them got hacked by somebody, I don't know who it was. Well, I'm assuming that they were doing some things to his computer and put some sort of code in there that he has to access on the internet. And so he's asked me to fix it, so I thought I'd give him something decent.
Solus is all the business right now. Everybody is going Solus. Even when we were playing Rocket League, people were telling us they're going Solus. Everybody's going Solus. Yep. I've gone Solus on my laptop. Love it. It's definitely the in thing right now, man. It's going crazy. I wonder if it's trending on Distro Watch yet.
That's good.
Yeah, it's number 10 on Distro Watch right now. That's crazy.
Nice.
Yeah. Top 10, man.
Well, I don't know about you, but Budgie's working
it's
pretty
gone
darn
up.
awesome for me.
Yeah.
The only problem that I'm having with it is
I use the budgie.
not all of the system tray icons are showing up. And I'm not sure why. Like for open programs. Remember Ryan, I was saying about how I didn't get the Telegram message?
Yeah.
Well, that's because Telegram doesn't show up in the system tray. It did, but now it's not no longer. And none of the other apps that I have open, like Steam or anything like that, are showing. Only the actual system tray icons, like the network and the notifications and stuff. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
I think it's user error.
It could be between the chair and the keyboard. It could be. But
I think it's interesting. If you look at Solus in 2016, it was number 22 on the list. And so now it's in the top 10. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's a big jump.
Yeah, it is.
People are liking what Ike's bringing, man.
I'll be back, guys. I've got to fix something up here.
All right, man.
We lost Colin again?
Yeah, we did. Michael? Can you hear us, Michael? Are you there?
Oh, I can hear you. You can hear me.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now.
We can hear you now.
Yep.
Yeah. Nice.
Solus. So you're saying that before it was different, but now you can get Solus Faction.
Solus Faction?
Well, whatever you said, dude.
I like that. That's really good, man. Those are the kind of jokes we need around here.
Right.
No, I seriously, I don't know what's going on
Punisher.
with the system tray, but there's definitely something. It was working fine, and then now it's not. So I'm not sure what's going on with it, but that's not a big deal.
Hits per day on Solus have gone up 815. I think it's just interesting to see how, we kind of feel like it's trending. Everybody's telling us they're running Solus, and you can see it in the stats here in Distro Watch. He's doing something right.
Yeah, but that's, Distro Watch.
It's Distro Watch.
Oh, don't start being a snob.
Distro Watch.
It's Distro Watch.
That's not snobbish. It's just not a metric that's usable.
What's usable then?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, that helps. So with the one metric we do have, it looks like it's trending up.
What's impossible to tell most of the time?
Well, let's put it this way. There's a heck of a lot of people talking about it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's got a ton of interest for sure.
Anecdotally.
I mean, mainly because Solus 3 came out. So, I mean, it's natural that people would be talking about it for the week after it came out.
And installing it.
Well, yeah. It's just there's always a lot of hype on big releases for stuff like that. And what's funny is that Solus was acting like they weren't going to do any releases anymore because they're going to do rolling release, which in terms of getting attention is a terrible thing to do. But they recognize that, it seems, and now they're doing it's still rolling. It's just they're also making here's a snapshot release. This is why this is important, and here's all these features and stuff. It's like, yep, that's exactly what you should do.
Yeah,
and also adding
publicity
snaps.
Publicity wise, yeah.
The adding snaps part is like a huge boon to their traffic.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
Like they're getting people like, oh, I can actually use apps now. Great. So once you have that, it solves a lot of issues.
So on the top of the list is Mint, interestingly enough, because that's not been the case. They've been in the top 5, but it's interesting to see Mint jump. What's new in Mint? Wonder why they had to jump to the top here.
Nothing.
Nothing. I'd agree. I'm not a huge fan of. I used to when I was first starting out, and I went from Ubuntu and naturally went to Mint next, and was not a huge fan. But I know a lot of people love it.
Yeah, a lot of
don't
people
see
like
anything new.
Michael's a big fan of Mint. I've talked to him before about it.
The biggest.
He's a huge.
Oh,
fan of
good.
Mint.
Well, then you can tell us all about your love for it.
Okay,
We'll stay silent, and you just go.
Okay, so Mint is awful, and
Gosh. Hey, you're not a very opinionated person, are you?
no, never. That would be ridiculous. An internet user, a Linux user, combine the two, never. There's no
Never
such thing.
opinionated.
Never.
Hey, do you guys have your coffee?
I bet that coffee tastes so much better in that Destination Linux cup.
I have a Nerds Rule cup.
It doesn't taste as good in Nerds Rule.
It doesn't. Tastes way better in a Destination Linux.
But I do have,
Wow, look at that.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
we go for a Yeti cup here.
Flashing the Bing.
Right.
I just wear my stuff on my chest.
Yeah.
There you go.
See, and all I got is a coffee mug. What the heck?
You could put on your shirt real quick.
No, that's all right.
But like I think Mint, what thing is Mint's doing is didn't they have like 18.3 press coming out, and that's why they got some little
Bumps and
I don't
clicks.
know, when is 18.3 coming out?
Yeah, I think they made an announcement that 18.3 is getting some like new features. They're like, they're replacing some dependencies so that Nemo can be used outside of Cinnamon. Like you could always use Nemo without Cinnamon, but you had to install the Cinnamon like stack. And now you don't have to. And they're doing all these other things that are like things that other distros did like years ago. So it's like they're talking about how it's amazing that they're no longer like messing with the desktop. Like you can actually have icons that are separate from the desktop, and it's like no, it was the Nemo separate from the desktop rendering. It's like, okay, that's just you're the only one that has that problem. Okay.
Yep. Well, this is the great answer you get. You go to the Linux Mint forums and it says when is 18.2 due and when is 18.3 due, and the answer is 18.2 will be released when it's ready. This was back in February, and sometime after that, when 18.3 is ready, it will be released. If you're eager for updates, perhaps you would be happier running a distro like Debian. Sid, like. Couldn't you just answer the guy and say we are not sure, but it should be around this time frame? It's
a very Blizzard-y like answer. That's what Blizzard always says. Like, when's your new game going to be ready? When it's ready. So
come on.
It's easy to say when Mint's going to, and like they never give you an actual time frame, but it's always 1 to 2 months after the next Ubuntu release.
Right.
For no reason. Like they're not even based on the Ubuntu versions anymore, but it's always that case. It's like 8 months or so. So you can pretty much just expect it in November.
Well, it would be nice if they would just... You back, Colin?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, it would be nice if they just answered a little bit, more for the... Because, people who ask that question are going to be the newer people going to the forums, and it'd be nice if they just answered it in a more... friendly way.
I think that Mint being the beginner suggestion is a horrible thing. People should stop it.
I just remembered to open chat. Hey, Heather.
I have never, ever considered Linux Mint for the beginner, ever.
People do it. People suggest it's like the best beginner. They've said it for years. It was the best beginner for people who are switching from Windows and stuff. It's like because it has a Windows-like interface.
I did at one time because of the way how easy they had it set up, and they have their certain software that's set up more like a controlled environment type area. So I would always suggest that, but not anymore.
Hey, Chip said in the comments, Dash, you had to get Michael going on Mint, didn't you?
I've refrained myself a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Apparently, your reputation.
Frank, it's good that you got your T-shirt, but wait till you get that mug because the coffee tastes really good in it. I'm just saying.
It's hotter. The roast is more pure in that cup. all that stuff.
The ground is more fine.
Yep.
Nick said he recommends Arch Linux for beginners.
Yep. I mean, it's obviously a troll, but you know.
Yeah.
Well,
There are people who do that. There are legitimate people who do that. And it's
There are. I've seen people say that they recommend a certain whatever Arch for beginners, but I would not recommend that.
I recommend Solus for beginners.
nice.
I don't
What's
know
wrong
if
with
I
me
would
for
recommend
beginners
Solus
anyway?
for beginners.
I like Solus. I like Ubuntu Budgie. I think was fantastic for beginners. Ubuntu overall is fantastic for beginners. That's where most people start. Manjaro wouldn't be bad for beginners. It depends on how beginner they are. If they know nothing about PCs or operating systems, then probably not. But Manjaro is pretty simple to use, really.
I would argue that Manjaro has management issues.
Hey, Joe.
Right.
So you can't they've changed what they're doing all the time. People complain about Canonical doing what the community wanted, and how can you trust them because they might get rid of something now? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, you asked for it. And other distros do the same thing but worse, make claims that are ridiculous and then never follow through with them, and they don't get anything. Like, no bad press about it. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I still don't know if I would recommend Solus, not because it's not a great operating system, because it is. It's just that it... Yeah, well, one, the rolling part, but two, especially if you're going to go with like the budgie version, it is a little bit different for... And I guess we are... got to specify who we're talking about when we say beginners. Like
the actual definition of the word beginner, yeah.
Yeah, like if you're coming from Windows, I don't know if budgie's the best...
The fact that that's a thing.
...setup for you.
Well,
so
I mean,
I would probably go with like...
What do you mean?
Like as far as the setup, the way the desktop itself is set up. Now they did put the traditional panel at the bottom and the menu at the left and everything. It's kind of getting better, but I think budgie itself, like if you go into you open up any type of settings panel, I don't know. It's getting there, but I don't know if I would recommend it today for the beginner.
Interesting.
At least not the budgie one.
I mean, I wouldn't.
Maybe the mate one.
I wouldn't do the
Mate,
it's mate, but whatever. I would say the Solus because Solus is good, but the rolling part makes me kind of iffy on it. You can look at all the updates that Solus does, and it's very rare that there's actually a big break or anything. But it's a pretty new distro. And also a rolling release, so it's kind of and they update the kernel like really frequently. So it's kind of not something I'd want to put a beginner on, just because of that.
No, Acid said Ubuntu Mate for beginners.
Yeah, I would say that.
I agree.
That's one of the ones I would suggest for sure. Especially since there's all the interface switcher can turn it into like a Windows feel within 4 seconds.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, provided that they know where it is and how to do it, but still.
Joe, what's going on with you, man?
Well, I wound up buying a laptop for my wife tonight, and it took me 2 days to decide because, of course, we're looking at Windows 10, which is like putting a stake in my heart. So but for her, it's just, and that's going to be a learning curve for her too, of course. I've been trying over and over and over again to convince her to try running some sort of Linux distro because, again, I've tested everything she does for her business, and so far I haven't run across anything that doesn't work with it. But in the back of my mind was thinking that the one time she's in real estate, so the one time that maybe there's some program or something that maybe may not be cloud-based or whatever that she would want to either try or use or have to have, and then of course if it didn't work with Linux, then she's in a bind. So it's amazing the struggle I went through for 2 days trying to decide what to buy her. And I wound up buying her a Lenovo, which I thought would probably be the better choice for her business machine. That's the first time getting one, although I've dealt with some older ones, with refurbs and stuff like that. But I thought maybe it was my age a little bit too, but it's funny how when you get into using Linux as much as I've been lately. And, you know, it's funny when you talk about beginners, I'm still kind of, I've said this before, I'm still more on the novice end, even though I've been using it pretty solid here for a good year to 2 years. But I'm still on my learning curve. But it's amazing how, even looking back where I started to what it is now and what I can do with it. And, you know, one of the things you're talking about updates, like rolling releases, whatever, you know, I'm on 18.2, of course, we've talked about that before, but I noticed that I get a little reluctant with doing some updates. Like even I did a Chrome update again on here, and I started having some lag issues on my internet today a little bit. And so I went down, booted the router or whatever. So I don't know if that had something to do with it. It does seem to be running better again. But you know, and that could happen with Windows too. But I still get concerned with some of the updates. In one breath, you know, yeah, you should do them, especially I try to be a little more selective on what I'm putting in there, but I'm getting to the point where if it isn't broke, do you really need to update something, you know? And I think that goes for any distro, don't you agree?
No. If it's a security update, you absolutely should do that.
Well, yeah, security, yeah, definitely. But
the problem is that security updates are off by default, so that's awful.
You know, I have mine where I can choose what I'm.
It's not that I don't like Mint; it's that Mint does terrible things.
Well, and again, I'm biding my time. I'm being a little patient here because for me, the changeover now will go to, you know, Ubuntu Mate. At this point, you know, I'd rather maybe just wait for a long-term release to come out. I don't know. Right now, I know they've got the beta still working out there. Maybe if that comes, you know, comes along where it doesn't seem to have any issues. And I think the beta actually was pretty darn solid for being a beta by what little testing I did with it.
I mean, there's really not much. They don't really do much between the point releases. They change the interface. They change their application stack. They update things like that. But they don't really change the core or anything. So there's like not much to worry about in that sense. Like the stability is the same because it's the same base.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like the things they change is cinnamon and mate. They use some of the mate stuff. They also don't use some of the other stuff, and they like update their Python scripts and stuff like that. But they don't really change that much, so it shouldn't be a problem because I think their betas are just like labeled beta, but they don't really do that much.
I feel like rolling releases have gotten a bad name from some things that must have happened before I joined Linux. Because I know when I chose Manjaro as one of my top distributions, everyone would come, not everyone, people would come into the channel and be like, yeah, wait till all your packages break and tell me how much you'll like it. And I was like, all right. So, you know, but I had none of that. And I use, when I use my machine, I'm not using it just to surf the internet. It's, you know, to do a lot of things from video editing to production, development, web design, all of that different stuff. So I can't get into my machine and not have it working or have a program not work. I did have those issues, by the way, funny enough, in Mint, where I would have things that I could not figure out what was going on, like strange screen tearing issues and things like that, that I could not get around when I was using Mint, but I hadn't used 18.2. But had not have that issue with Antergos or with Manjaro where I have broken packages or systems. So I feel like, I don't know what the changes are, but I feel like rolling releases, when you look at Solus, Antergos, Manjaro, and these are not having those same problems that may have happened in the past, and maybe they've improved the way they're releasing their releases. I don't know.
Well, it's also probably a hardware issue. Like you have maybe a hardware that's like right on the perfect situation. You could have that, or you could have, depending on when you joined Linux, like 7 years ago was a disaster. Like you could totally wreck your system. But just a couple years ago, Intel changed the way they do their kernel code. So they removed their microcode from the kernel, and you had to install your microcode separately. But if you were already using a distro that had rolling release and you already had the microcode in there, when you updated your kernel, you couldn't use your computer. Like it was just done. You'd have to drop to TTY, and you'd have to install the microcode manually in a separate thing, then just run the process, and then reboot again, and oh, now your computer's back. So there was like so many people who were using Arch that weren't aware of any of that stuff, and then it just collapsed on them. Like that kind of stuff can happen all the time. Like whether it's usually a graphics driver or a kernel driver, not necessarily something the kernel provides, but something that's integrated into the kernel, like the microcode. or a graphics driver for NVIDIA, for example, has oftentimes where people will accidentally update their NVIDIA driver before they updated their kernel. Then their kernel has a new dependency for needing a different version, and the NVIDIA is not up to date to the kernel. So if you had the kernel installed, the NVIDIA package would have been like, you can't use this one yet. But if they accidentally did the NVIDIA first, then the NVIDIA wouldn't be able to check and would see you had the right kernel, and then it would just break and you couldn't use your system. You have to drop TTY, downgrade the kernel or downgrade the NVIDIA drivers. It's just all kinds of stuff can happen because the fact that it moves so fast is the problem. Not necessarily that it would crash everyone. It's just if any beginner has any problem like that, Linux looks like a broken mess. Like if something can make it where your machine will not boot at all, and you have to go online, which you can't, unless you go on your phone or you know someone who can fix it, it's just going to look like it's worthless, and you shouldn't even waste your time with it. So like that's why rolling is dangerous, because if a single situation happens like that to someone, they're gone.
And I think that's what I was getting at too, Michael, was that when you're coming into Linux and you're learning about it, like as I did, or am, and these are the things that you hear is that they say, oh, you always want to do long-term releases, because if you get on something that's got a rolling release or the incremental updates, something could stop working. But you know what? Think about it too. That's what's going on with Windows 10 too right now. It's a constant updating mess, and it's forever breaking people's hardware and whatever. Yeah, is it getting better? Sure. But I think that's always going to be out there. And that's another reason why, aside from the security issues, why I was just struggling with this machine today, about to get her, because I'm thinking, okay, so if she's working and all of a sudden it doesn't update and it decides it's not going to work with something that's in the machine or a driver for her printer or whatever it is, for her, she gets really frazzled very easily.
So it's kind of interesting though, because I think you bring up a good point. I've had to do a Windows install for a laptop recently, and it was amazing how many. I made my living off of Windows. My dad ran a small computer shop. We sold Windows-based computers. In my work life, we ran Windows-based computers and servers and supported them. So it's kind of been my world, and I didn't expect to stay with Linux. It's one of those things where I did my channel and did the 30 days and got addicted to it and haven't gone back. But what's interesting in playing in Windows recently and doing an install is how many problems I ran into. And I didn't think about those problems when I was on Windows. I pretty much would blame the manufacturer always. Yeah. But in Linux, it seems everybody blames Linux. Like it's Linux' fault that this isn't working. And with Windows, it's just the manufacturer. Nobody blames Windows, because how could that be wrong? But I ran into so many issues, things like external hard drives not mounting. And they have this new thing that just blew me away when I was trying to install Krita. And it popped up a new message that says, this is not part of Microsoft's official App Store software and could lead to getting viruses. Please go into your settings if you want to override this, and that you can install unknown sources, which was very much like an Android device when you go into it and you select the unknown sources. But of course, it's got all these warnings basically telling you that you could get viruses if you do this. So think about somebody who's not PC savvy and how Microsoft's almost forcing them into this wall. But I also think a lot of people give Windows a pass and act like nothing goes wrong on it, where I made my entire living fixing crap on Windows. So it's one of those things where I think Linux gets a bad rap for things that's not necessarily its fault.
Well, and that's the other concern I have too, is because I have loaded for her LibreOffice, and I just put on a what was it? No, it wasn't Shotwell. It was oh god. Anyway, she wanted a photo manager on there, and I loaded a couple of them up today and stuff. And because she was complaining, she didn't. She goes, that thing with the dog. Well, GIMP kept popping up as a photo editor. When she's just looking to drop them into a place, she doesn't want to struggle with stuff and things like that. I know I put Raw Therapy on there, but there's another one I put on there too, and I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, that's the other concern I have, is because Windows is looking to shut down any outside third-party software whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do is, on her old laptop, keep it as a temporary backup. But I think now what I'm going to do is partition it, and I'm going to put Ubuntu Mate on there, and I'm going to try to start teaching her on it and let her run with it and see and play with it a little bit. I mean, she doesn't. Problem is she doesn't have the willingness to take the time because she's so busy with other things.
Sure.
I think if I could just force her to take, even if it's a half an hour here and there or whatever, and let her try some things with it, maybe kind of groom. Because if she runs into any issues with this, I want her to know there's another option out there. Because as it is, even Windows 10 from Windows 7 is going to be a learning curve for her.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And even for me, you know, when you look at it, you're absolutely right, because they look at Linux as a bunch of compartmental or components that are just a mishmash of stuff, is I think the way people have it perceived, when they don't realize that basically, you know, every operating system is just that. It's a piece of software.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yeah, Windows has been around forever, but you know, they don't realize how long Linux has been around there. And if you could really show somebody what it was to what it is today, I think could be the difference. It's coming down to education. You know, I think there were some quite a bit of converts over to open source and Linux, and I say open source for software and everything, from when XP went away and people hated, you know, 8. When you think about it, think about how it was with Windows 8.1, you know, Windows 8.0, 8.1. They thought that was the worst thing in the world. Nobody, you know, now that Windows 10 came out and all the to do when they did the forced updates and they were breaking people's business machines and everything else in the beginning, it ticked a lot of people off. But you don't hear half the complaining about Windows 8 anymore, or even barely any like you used to. You know, so, and I think it's the same thing with this. It's going to come down to, I think, time is what's going to ultimately point people in one direction or the other, because even Apple, I mean, you know, you talk about the taskbar and having everything down in the bottom left, and everybody wants it to look like Windows because that's the best way to convert somebody over. But if you get somebody that gets frustrated with a Windows computer and they go to Apple, isn't that the same thing? They're going to a top, you know, bar with a dock and, you know, and all that stuff. So I mean, what's the difference?
Well, I think it's interesting. We were seeing a recent study on, I don't know, Rocco, was it on our Destination Linux podcast? There was a news story about a lot of the Linux users we're seeing come over. Their thinking is actually coming from Mac OS and not Windows. So that was really interesting to see. And if you look at, I think Windows has done a lot to ruin its user base and hurt its user base, and make a lot of people think about Linux. I know even on my channel alone, dozens and dozens of people telling me they're switching when they see the videos and things you can do in Linux. But Mac as well, with their hardware, the cost of their hardware, their dongle fiasco that they're doing, they're alienating their population heavily in a population that was used to being alienated already, and seeing a lot of migration. So I think you're going to see a lot of people kind of looking for alternatives, and this is probably one of the best times to be talking to people about Linux, because I think people are aggravated and they're starting to look for something different.
Yeah, but I think it's gotten a lot better than it was. It's almost like it's jumped from a few years ago, and how many times something has broke or has caused one of them catastrophic things like Michael was talking about with the kernel and the NVIDIA drivers. It's gone to a point where it was happening quite often, all the time, to the point where it's gotten to the point where it only happens maybe once every couple months, once every 6 months, maybe even close to once every year, where you have something that kind of breaks something to where you can't boot your system. Right. I think the last time I remember that happening was back in January, I think it was, where there was an Arch update that they were coming out and saying, don't update your computer yet. You know what I mean? And if you had updated, and I actually had updated it already, and I didn't have any problems with it. So I was one of the fortunate ones, but there was a lot of people that they said, don't update it because their computers were completely unbootable. So, but what I'm saying is it's gotten a lot better. Right. And the breakages have become way less frequent.
Yeah.
Well, I was working on Windows on a laptop, HP Pavilion, and it had Windows 7 on it. I decided to put Solus on it. Now, I have heard
Yeah,
so
Windows.
That must be true.
You're right, Colin. Windows, and that's probably been a good month or so that or maybe more of it. Windows had announced, or Microsoft had announced that they're going to lock out the older CPUs.
Yeah.
So your only choice is to either newer systems or, and this funny thing is when you think about when they first launched this, their big thing was, oh, you could even run it on older hardware with just a couple of gigs of RAM and it's going to run really light and everything else. And now all of a sudden that it's getting out there, and now they're looking to start locking stuff down, and that's exactly what's happening. And the funny thing is Linux. And when you look on there to see, when I was looking at different hardware and different machines, they had different models. One of, like the Dell XPS, actually can be a Linux machine too as well. And you're starting to see more of them now showing that they support Linux as an alternative over. Obviously they can't run a Mac or one of the OS softwares from OS 10 or something like that. You could run Windows obviously on a Mac, but I don't believe you could do it the other way around that I'm aware of. So, but I think that it's come a long way with people hearing and knowing about it and what it is. They may still not understand it, but they're at least aware of it more and more now because of all of this. And I'm sorry, people.
It's the Windows assistive technologies I was using to upgrade to Windows 10. So normally I'll do that with a computer before I install Linux. So if I do need to go back to Windows 10 because the client doesn't like it, then I can put Windows 10 back on because it's got the code in the CPU, but it just wouldn't take it. So I'm assuming that computer was too old. It's about 2010, I think, 2011, something like that.
Well, it's not just Linux that they're locking down. They're locking down their own previous, Windows 7. They're locking out. They're saying that Windows 7 will not be able to run or get updates on newer hardware. So, I mean, and
so I've read about it.
When you tell someone to run Windows 10 for free right now, and who knows how long they'll keep that way, and obviously it's still to get more people on it. They look at you cross-eyed like they think you're doing something illegal, but they're not aware that because they don't care. They want to get you on it because they want to data mine you, and that's where they're making their money.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, they wanted to get their user base to move off the older versions of Windows. Windows 7, namely, nobody wanted to leave 7 because it was probably the last good release Windows will ever produce, or at least has at this point. And so they definitely wanted the data mining money, but you also have to remember that they're automatically going to get a ton of money also from computer sales because all of those have the built-in Windows 10 license cost into them. Additionally, they're going to make money when you upgrade your machine. Now, some people have said, well, I haven't had to do this. So I can tell you when I did the free Windows 10 upgrade before I ever switched to Linux, and then I changed out my motherboard and CPU, it immediately told me I had to buy a copy of Windows 10. And I could not get around that. The only reason I was able to kind of skip it is because I went back, reinstalled Windows 7, and I was still within that free period. So once that free period ends and you change your hardware, you have to pay for that $109 license or whatever they want for it then. So it was kind of it was for people like me who upgrade my machine, it really wasn't anything special to get that free because I ended up having to get a license anyways. And so if you leave your machine and you use it for 10 years, maybe it's not a big deal, but I think a lot of people upgrade major equipment components. So they're kind of triple dipping all around. They're getting metadata, they're getting the hardware, they're getting the license fees. And eventually they're going to push the businesses to force enterprises to move to Windows 10 as well because they're killing support for patches and things. Windows 7, where a lot of businesses still aren't, so they're going to make mega money forcing them over to the 10 platform.
Well, and that's what Microsoft realizes when you're changing hardware. even if it's just a hard drive. And that's again one more thing that I was struggling with this, because the computer, the way I bought it and set it up today, is I wanted her on SSD. So they actually have a 256 gig PCIe NVMe, which was really nice, but it had this I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, if it's just initials, but let's call it for what it is Opal.2.0, which is basically an encryption capability on the drive. And that's what made me just finally go ahead and do it, because I didn't know anything really about that, and I was trying to research it today, because what I was going to do was order it without that SSD, let them load it on the mechanical drive, and then just buy the one I wanted, put it in, and then load a fresh copy to get rid of any minimal bloatware they may have, like McAfee or whatever, because I could uninstall that, but it's always better not to leave remnants. But then when I saw that, I thought, well, if there's a driver issue or whatever, I don't want her to have any downtime, which she still has the other laptop to use. But it was just all these struggles on what to do with this stuff. And, you're right, because I thought, okay, if I want to reactivate a fresh copy, let's say that drive that's in there goes to hell. And all I've got is the recovery CD, and I have to change that drive. And even if I want to put a fresh copy of Windows in there, I still have to go through their troubleshooting, through their settings, in order to hope that it'll recognize the license. Otherwise, you have to update it. And I think that that's so wrong, because, and that's the one advantage to using Linux too that people don't realize, is that they don't know that if you change one simple piece of hardware that Windows doesn't recognize, it could lock you down and you'd have to buy another license.
Yeah, when you do a Windows upgrade, it's a half a day process because of the licensing. It really is. You've got to go find your Windows license, reactivate it, sit on their automation machine, manually type in your key. It tells you, yes, how many PCs have you installed it on? So you're sitting on that for at least 10, 15 minutes getting your license reestablished. Then you've got all of your Adobe software, whatever you're using, that you got to find the keys for. Heaven forbid you lose one, because then you're buying it again. But if you still have them, you've still got to install the software. Then you've got to do all of your registration keys. I couldn't believe when I moved to Linux and I had to reload my system. I was using Ubuntu Studio at the time, which had all of the suites and things that I was using for video editing and all that. It was like 20 minutes. I was up and running, and everything was there. I could immediately get in and start editing videos, all of that. It's so unbelievable how much faster things are in a Linux world to fix them and repair them.
You mentioned re-entering the key. If you're buying something off the shelf, or you're buying a proprietary system already built, you don't have that luxury, and that key is embedded in the BIOS.
Yeah. So
there's no key to punch in. That's the other problem, without not giving you a registration key to be able to log it in.
True.
So, talking about what's good for new users, I'm trying to be smart with what I do. The users that I'm installing it for now, I'm just using a separate data partition, and then just run the operating system on a separate partition as well. Any issues that they may have, and if it breaks, I can just simply reinstall, recreate the links to the document folders, done deal. So then you don't have to worry about all this ridiculous troubleshooting thing. So you could pretty much set up any operating system that way, whether it be Arch or whatever, I think.
Right.
I used to use a separate home partition, but I don't do that anymore, because you can't change the desktop environment with a separate home partition, because with a different desktop environment, it picks up all the configurations on the home drive. So it messes up your environment and your settings.
Yeah, the home folder is good for if you're doing a separate home is good for a different purpose. Like, it's not intended to do that. Like, if you wanted to do a separate home, like, it'd be good to separate home if you were doing different distros with the same DE, or if you're doing it so that you wanted to upgrade easily, like, that would be perfect usage for the separate home. But if you're using multiple DEs, that could be difficult.
I found that out the hard way.
Well, if you're doing multiple DEs with different distros, if you're doing multiple DEs with the same distro, it's possible to be okay. It depends.
Yeah. I just found it.
I've always had a separate partition, though, on my And there are times where I will have to, like if I reinstall, well, I'll give you an example. What I tried to do was when I had my GNOME install here, or a Unity install right before I installed Solus, I figured I would go into the home partition and just delete out the settings folders. And I went and I selectively picked everything I thought were just applications that wouldn't affect anything, and deleted all the rest. I saved the ones like, you know, Thunderbird, Mozilla, and all. And I installed Solus, and I came up, and it did not look anything like Solus. Okay, so there was obviously settings that were left over in the home folder that I didn't delete. So what I just figured, you know what, I'm just going to delete the whole thing, because I have it backed up on another drive. So I deleted the whole thing, installed it still to the secondary partition, and then copied everything back over, and it was fine. So,
well, one thing that I don't remember who it was talking about it last week. I think maybe it was Gentoo. I did put it in a VM, and I've been starting to look around that too, just to kind of be a little more open-minded to, you know, something that I hadn't really considered before. But one of the things, you remember when we were talking about screen sharing, and Zev said, why can't you share? It's down at the bottom. You know, well, I realized I was running, because it seemed to be a little more stable, believe it or not, than even Chrome. When I was on the camera here, I was using Opera. Well, Opera, for whatever reason, the screen share feature is not available on this, you know, on Appearing. So now I decided, okay, well, I'll come in on Chrome tonight. But that's the other thing too, is like even Firefox, it seems like all these browsers, there's always one little feature or something. That's some of the little quirks that, and I don't know if that would still be the same thing on Windows side of things, but I know from a Linux standpoint, those are the little, you call them bugs, call them quirks, whatever they are, they kind of still get under my craw a little bit, because it seems like
operating systems have those things.
What's that?
All of the operating systems have those little tiny, just bothersome things that are not really that big of a deal and not bugs. They're just weird quirks. And Windows has it all the time. The difference between Windows and Linux, when you see it on Windows, you dismiss it. Like most people do. I mean,
yes,
I haven't used Windows significantly in a long time, but most people don't care. They don't even recognize that it's a broken piece. Like it's a tiny little thing. Like, well, whatever, I'll deal with it, and they'll move on. Or they'll complain about it and then just ignore it afterwards. Or they'll, you know, find someone else to fix it, and they'll pay a lot of money to have it fixed. But then you go to Linux, and that same problem happens, and they go, oh, "It's broken. It's a piece of crap."
Right. Yeah, the stock isn't cut.
So, Rocco, you'll appreciate this. I got a comment 3 hours ago on one of the very old videos that I did back when I was in Windows using Opera. I was talking about Opera.
Right.
And the comment I got 3 hours ago, and I'll have to blank some of it out, but essentially it goes, Opera sucks, exclamation mark. Gave our PC a effing virus, and my mom uses it to do work, exclamation mark. So, again, to all of your points, they blame Opera, not Windows, for getting that virus. They don't blame the person who probably was downloading things they shouldn't be for getting that virus. They're blaming Opera. But if it was Linux, it would be Linux sucks. Linux got this virus. I guarantee you.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you what, just talking on what Joe was saying before, this is a fresh install of Solus 3 Budgie I've got running here now. Now, I hadn't put Google Chrome on. So before I was dropping out, you probably noticed I was dropping out, and then I disappeared for a bit. I installed Google Chrome. Now it's working fine. So now Firefox comes default in Solus, but I don't know what the difference is. But
well, there you have it. There you have it. Yeah. Firefox is out. Chrome is in.
Oh, no. Oh,
what can you do?
That is too far, sir.
It's running.
You know, I've said this over and over again. You can't. Yes, the operating systems could be vulnerable. Whatever. You can't protect people from themselves. They still have to be the ones to click on stuff, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter what you use, and that's why I tell people it doesn't matter. Oh, Linux is more secure. Well, in theory, yes, but no. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, bottom line, if you click on something, I've said this before. If you're standing behind a 16-inch vault door, nobody's going to get to you. But the minute you open it up, you've just made it vulnerable. And that's the same thing when you get on the internet. The minute you get on the internet, you're opening your computer, you're opening that door.
Definitely not. Definitely not. No.
Acid Monkey uses Chrome too? I'm so disappointed. We had so much fun playing Rocket League, and now I have to ban you from my Discord. That's so unfortunate. Oh man.
Like the idea that Linux is vulnerable because you're on the internet or whatever, like that's just wrong.
I don't mean it that way. But go ahead.
Even you're saying that if someone clicked in and downloads something and they're infected the same kind of way, like nope, that won't happen either. Like it does. Like there's so many manual things that a person has to do in order to get an infection on Linux. And unless you're doing like ridiculous server stuff that you're not prepared to do. But if you're just a desktop user and you download an application that is a virus, well, it doesn't matter because it doesn't have permission to run anyway, and it's not going to run unless you click it.
No, but what I'm talking about is like if you click on an email link, and I tell them it's not the first
nothing.
Click on it. It takes multiple clicks. Usually, it's not like it happens just on a one-click application. It's like when you get an email from somebody who their friends were compromised, they don't know this, and they say, "Hey, check this out. This could interest you." You click on it, you go to the website. Okay, so that's your first click. You click on the link that's in there. There's your second click. You have to do. It's a longer process than just a simple, and that's typically on Windows now.
Oh yeah, Windows for that will do that. You can just click one thing and it'll do it.
What's that?
Yeah, on Windows, you can click one thing and it'll mess up your system.
Right, but I mean, even on Linux, if you click on the right thing, you can potentially...
Doesn't matter. You can literally manually, voluntarily download a virus. It will not run because it doesn't have permission automatically to run. You have to give it permission to run.
But that's my point, is people who don't know any better still could do that.
They wouldn't even know how to give it permission. If it's a bash script or something...
I don't know. I beg to differ. Now, let me go back again. It's been a long, long time since I've had any issues or even come close to something on these later distros. In the earlier days, I think it was probably more true where you could get something. But yeah, it still is much more secure. It's not impervious.
It's definitely not. No, people who say it's invulnerable is ridiculous. But to say that it's like anywhere close to the same is just not accurate because the fact that you have to download, if you download a virus that you know for a fact is a virus that even says Trojan, this is a massive virus, don't do it, it won't do anything because you have to you have to give it permission to run, and you have to manually make it run. So unless someone goes through all these steps to give themselves a virus, it's not going to happen. But
so how does that affect, Michael? Like Wine, like if you have Wine installed, does it do anything in that area?
It depends. Like there are certain cases that some things can get, because Wine is kind of an emulator, and they claim it also kind of isn't, because it's an emulator, but it also has stuff on top of it that has other SDKs and other APIs that make it more than just an emulator. So it's a compatibility layer, but it does have emulator aspects in the sense of confinement. There are some times where some bugs and some viruses can break through that confinement. It is possible. So if you install Wine, you're adding an extra security vulnerability that isn't necessarily vulnerability, but could be because the stuff you're installing could be infections. So like the WannaCry thing, for example, that's a perfect example because it actually broke confinement. It was possible to infect a Linux machine if it had Wine through the WannaCry Samba issue, or SMB issue, really. Not really Samba, but it's a different thing. Similar, technically the same protocol, but different things. But that broke the confinement, so Wine is kind of a potential issue there.
Well, Fradham said that Wine does not run as root. It still runs in the user space. It can only be an issue if you give it elevated permissions. But Wine does have access to your files, though, correct? So if you have a virus type that goes after files, it could affect that.
There's also ways to break the confinement to get out of that limitation. That's what WannaCry did. Like, people were testing it to see if it was possible to make WannaCry break the confinement, and yes, it is. So because of that, you're not protected by the user space aspect because it can still get into the other files. Like, it would be limited what it can do, but it's not like it's going to crash your entire system and destroy everything. But it will be able to break certain things. And there are cases where, for example, if the WannaCry was purposefully meant to attack a Wine install, it could potentially break through the confinement, set up a rootkit, and then do whatever it wants. So it depends on how, like, if their focus is wine, which why would anyone do that? Because that'd be like, that's a subset of a subset, and that would be kind of ridiculous. But if they wanted to, it would technically be possible. It's just not really likely, and most people don't run wine. And if really, most people shouldn't run wine.
Well, I know what I'm doing right now: uninstalling wine.
Well, Fraudum says,
yeah,
it would allow it to affect your files, but not the system files. But that is actually what I would be concerned with, is my files, because I can reinstall Linux in a Flash. You know what I mean? I'd be worried about losing my files.
If for a permanent issue, system files would be a problem, but like they're not what people care about.
Right.
But
well, like I said, I have my.
It is possible to break it. Like
I have my home partition separated.
Its own stuff.
So I have it separated from one from the other. So if it affects the root files, then I don't. You know, I mean, yeah, I care about that. Obviously, I don't want to just try that just for kicks. But I definitely care about my files more.
Yeah, and there are some cases where like wine is okay. Like if everything you get with wine is from like the Wine HQ database, that should be okay. Like it should be like, if you go and test everything you do before you use it, then that should be fine. But like you're creating a compatibility layer for all kinds of Windows things, because they're not trying to only work on good stuff. They're trying to work on just the protocol and the format itself. So anything could happen.
Well, the reality of it is, I think most Linux users are their own worst enemies, because, like we said before too, is half the time when something gets broken in here, it's usually because we can't leave it alone. I know I can't. I've broken my own distros, and I know you said the same thing, Rocco, right? Like you just said, you're playing with something or changing something, or so you probably have more of a chance of doing that before getting a virus on it. But
Rocco has never broken his distro.
I've never broken any. I don't know what you're talking about. That's ridiculous.
And in fact, I never have either. Everything I do is just perfect.
Is that called deniability? Is that what that is? What about this?
I wish I had some behind-the-scenes videos of some of my early days in Linux, because I had my machine so messed up, I might even be able to stump some of you on what I did. But after that, things have run pretty smooth.
I could solve any problem you have.
Yeah, just format it.
Install Gentoo.
Yeah.
There we go.
I don't have a week's vacation yet. Okay.
No, that's ridiculous. 4 days. Like 4 days.
4 days. Okay.
4 days for you, baby.
Well, I mean, like there's a level tier of like masochism. The Linux masochism. Like when you're doing like regular like Ubuntu stuff, that's not an issue whatsoever. That's easy. So that's like even anybody who's like can install a program can do it. So the level goes up and up and up. So you have like probably the first one that's like painful is Puppy, because Puppy is not designed for like an average user, and it's just like incredibly fast, and it's super specific to how it's built. So it has like a layered file system that pretty much no other distro has, except for things that are like related to it, like Quirky and stuff like that. But like that one kind of creates like its own little tier, but it's not really difficult. It's just you got to get used to this weirdness, because most of the time it's read only. Then you go into like the next level, which is like Arch, and Arch is difficult but doable in like a day if you have enough time to spend for. You can do it in an entire day if you just follow the beginner's guide and stuff like that. Then there's Gentoo, which is like a few days up to a week, depending on how much effort you're willing to put into it at a time. Then you go into like Crux, which is actually Gentoo and Slackware are about the same. Then you got Crux, which is kind of in the same realm of Arch, but they make you compile more. So they're like, it's like a hybrid between the two of Gentoo and Arch. Not in the sense of like they're related in any way. In fact, Arch is like inspired by Crux, but like the way they handle everything is like it's kind of confusing. So that gives you another level, and then you go into like. That's like the level here, and then the stupid level is LFS, and LFS would give you like you got a week minimum. Like you're probably going to look at it. It's probably going to take like 2-3 weeks.
It's like a Dante's Inferno of levels of Linux.
Yeah, Exactly.
What's the hardest one? Which one's the hardest
LFS. Guaranteed. Like everything else compared to LFS is like walking down the street. Like it's just.
So do you have to compile everything like you do in Gentoo on LFSD, or not?
No. Gentoo, you don't have to compile everything. There are binaries. People don't.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that because it's the meme is to say it's everything is compiled. But Chrome and Firefox and LibreOffice are all binaries because compiling that would take like 4 hours by itself for each one of those. So they provide a binary for those particular things. And also with Gentoo, you have the e-build system, and you have the portage structure and all this other stuff. Whereas LFS, you have literally none of that. Good luck. That's how it's structured. It's take everything you think about Gentoo, times it by like 20, and that's LFS.
Well, I'll be staying away from that one.
Sorry. Toss said to give Gentoo to an ex-wife or something.
Someone you hate. Yeah.
That's too good.
So Shane was going to jump on and tell us he went to a convention and he had a bunch of updates on VR and AR with powered by Linux. Are you going to jump on, Shane? And I'd love to hear about it.
Vive dropped in price.
I heard about that. What did it drop, about $100?
120, I think. 120. Still like $600.
So does that interest you guys at all? Because that doesn't really interest me.
Yes.
I don't know why. I don't think I'm into it yet. Maybe because I don't know its potential, but I'm just not interested in it yet.
I'm more interested in augmented reality than the virtual reality, but I know a lot of people differ from me on that. I just think augmented reality has a lot more potential for usage outside of games, and the games for VR right now are so weak, and I know that will change development time 6 to 10 years, so you've got a lot of stuff that will be coming out soon that will probably ramp VR up. But to me, the offerings are so weak right now to drop what would cost of a small computer on a pair of glasses to play some of these games just isn't there for me yet. I'd have to have some other application that I could say I could use this outside of gaming. And that's why augmented reality to me is far more interesting.
So the elephant in the room question is: have you experienced VR?
No.
No.
Okay.
Outside
so that's
of
why
Google
it's not
Glasses, outside of some of the Samsung's offerings, I haven't had a chance to play with it directly.
Okay, but you've experienced like video and stuff inside of VR.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's some games. Google Glasses has some of the games and stuff like that.
It has the Android terrible ones, yeah. But like there are some PC games that already have VR support. Like there's a game called Race the Sun. Have you played that before?
No.
It's a cool like it's a platformer, but not. It's like a combination of like I don't know. It's hard. You ever seen Zero Effects? Like those old games from the set.
Yeah,
like It's like that, but it's a time trial where you try to get to the different obstacles and pick up different items and get power-ups and stuff. But the time is not an actual time. It's the sun's setting. So like in the background is the sun, and you're trying to like get as far as possible and to beat the max level before the sun goes down. And you can also like get power-ups and make the sun go up again. So like, you can actually like change the time trial. So it's a dynamic time trial. But anyway, that game is awesome in VR.
Yeah, I assume there's going to be more games coming out. Well, that's like a 2013 game, right?
Yeah.
I assume there's more stuff that they're going to drop to make it more appealing. I just have more interest in augmented than the virtual. There just doesn't seem to be a sync perfectly yet. A lot of people still having problems with feeling sick. A lot of people still having problems with the comfort level. I'm not sure. I'm not sure even the hardware that costs that $700 is quite ready. Like it.
No.
Rarely do I wait for new hardware. I'm always one of the ones that like to adopt quickly. But this is one I'm kind of sitting on the sideline, just watching before I drop that money on it, because new things got to be coming around the corner.
The Vive has a good quality, but it's been tested and reviewed and stuff, and people said that the Oculus is kind of crappy and clunky. but the Vive is like solid built, like works as it suggested it will, and like all the games that seem to support VR seem to support Vive. So, and it's also made by HTC, so they usually make good hardware.
Yeah, they do.
But the VR thing is not necessarily for games. Like that's not necessarily like what I'm interested in. It's more of the I don't know, like the exploring of things, like for example, like Google Street View in VR, or like the web VR structure that Firefox was working on, so that you can actually like use VR inside of a browser, so you can have anything that's that has like full 360 degree, like like Street View or Google Maps, stuff like that, or like 360 videos on YouTube. Like any of those things could be using web VR to control it through a VR, like a Vive thing.
Yeah, but that's why augmented reality is more interesting to me, because I could have those same things like Google Street View, but be walking down the street with those, pop-ups and things coming up. Like,
if you're physically there.
Rocco messages me, and now I can't get away with it because it's gonna have his picture in my glasses, and I can't ignore it. Or I'm walking down the street and I'm lost like usual. I mean, I'm so bad with directions, I get lost in a McDonald's parking lot, and my little augmented reality map can come up and say, yeah, this is how you get out of the parking lot. Like, there's just so many more uses. But even in a video game environment, I think augmented reality can be a lot of fun. And the Nintendo 3DS and all those kind of show that they do some of that augmented reality. PlayStation has done that as well with their augmented reality videos that they have. And of course, they've gone VR as well with their headset. But originally, if you remember, they had the augmented reality where it kind of turns your living room into a video game with little things that would fly out and stuff. So yeah. I think I'm more interested in the augmented reality, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the most popular. That's the one I'm looking for. Either way, I'm going to be waiting on the sideline, kind of see where this all lands, because it's just a little too pricey of a bet for the amount of money to get into it, and what you're getting out of it right now just doesn't seem to be.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a whole new realm, too. It's not just a little bit of a jump. It's a whole new area to develop in. So, yeah, it's way better to let it play out and let the bugs get out of it before jumping into it.
But I think about
like just buying a new video card. This is a whole new level.
I think about my kids, though, and they're just going to be, like, playing in all these virtual or augmented reality games, and I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, well, I played Doom with a mouse and keyboard, and I was, and they're going to be making fun of it. That they're going to be used to that world. For us, it's it may be a little foreign. Well, not us, because we're still young, right, Rocco?
What was
Maybe.
It, again, I don't know if it's being on the hot seat on the show here or whatever, but Adam, you know how you think of your own name and you forget it, but when they were pushing the beginning, when they were talking about Windows 10, the VR were, what is it? I'm drawing a blank of what it's called when they do like Obi-Wan. Remember when they used to do the projection and you could see a figure, but it's not really there? What is
that's augmented reality?
Hologram.
Yep.
That was one of the things they talked about too, and I haven't heard a lot about that anymore. But that was part of the VR, experience you're supposed to get out of Windows 10, if you remember right.
Yeah, the augmented, that's kind of a portion of augmented reality, which is, I think, what you were about to say. But it's kind of that's where it's going. You almost have these holograms of things in front of you, and they're trying to take it there.
Well, there's one app.
Microsoft and Google are big into it.
There's one app you can get on the phone right now, and you have your star apps, where you can look up at the stars. It'll tell you exactly where the constellations are and everything. But there is one that actually does that, where it uses your camera and places the stars in an area, and you could still see the actual.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see if it's going to pop back up on YouTube. I haven't seen it come up yet. Hang on. Yeah, it's back there.
There we go.
They have to refresh if they're watching. They have to refresh or click the live button on there, because otherwise it'll look like it's frozen on the Big Daddy wallpaper.
Wow, no idea what happened there. Everything just went blank.
You must be in Windows right now.
Yeah, your window is gray and so.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I have no idea. Like the whole connection just lost.
Did you not want to talk about VR that much?
Well, I don't know. I was in the middle of talking. Crying out loud. I was in the middle of talking, and all of a sudden everybody just disappeared off the appear in window, and I'm like, "What's going on here?"
What did you change for a setting now, Michael? Because you just that's usually what happens. You're muted now.
Yeah, we're back. The stream is back,
By
hopefully.
By the way, Rocco, Zeb apologises for not being here today. He's on holidays.
I actually did message him and talk to him, and he said, yeah, he did say that he was. I think he said he was in Portugal or somewhere. He was on holiday.
Portuguese? So. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yep, and so he'll be here next week. So
yeah.
We'll keep the seat warm for him.
Yeah, he told me to mention it.
Tell him that's no excuse. He could still pipe in from even over there too. You know.
Yeah, I mean, he could have connected by his phone for crying out loud. I mean, even Das Geek made it this week.
That's right. This is a special edition of Big Daddy Live. Friday Night Live, because you got Das Geek.
The view count is going to go way up now.
Oh, it's skyrocketing. Das Geek
is going to be here.
I mean, look at it. It's over 2 million.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 20.
Mm-hmm. You know, the sad part is that YouTube will probably split this in 2 videos now because the live stream cut out.
Oh yeah, they will for sure.
You can just download it and put them together.
Fat Elvis said YouTube said it's not a bug, it's a feature.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good one.
So what were we talking about? We were talking about VR or something.
You said you were going to go out this weekend and buy some VR glasses.
No.
I heard it too. I
mean, you know, like, okay, here's an example of what I would think may be cool for like augmented reality or VR, where, you know, you're playing a game and you only have to, you know, like move a certain direction in order to look in a certain direction. Mm-hmm. That would be like a cool.
Brings the experience that every gamer has always done at least 100 times, where you're playing a game and you do that to see around. You're like, oh right, it's a monitor.
Hey, Rocco, Rocket League. We were just doing that.
Yes. Hey, I'm trying to go forward and I'm going like this. Yeah. Good thing nobody was watching me.
There's a guy I watch who does. He's a streamer, and he's every once in a while he'll be like, yep, leaned into that one. That was pointless.
Yeah.
Yep.
It does help your game.
But I mean, that might be an example that, you know, it may be a good. But like I said, I've not really seen much about it as far as like I've never tried it, never been anywhere where there was a VR set. So I'm not really excited about it because I don't know about it.
I'll tell you what's funny is watching videos of people trying the VR headsets and they actually fall down backwards because they get scared or lose their balance because they're so into the element. So I think that part of it is going to be so amazing when it fully gets there. I just don't think there's enough lure for me yet, but there's enough lure for some. But
I mean, it's totally there. It's just super expensive to do the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question in that sense. So you have VR and you have, you know, say you got a VR headset on, so you're pretty much enveloped in this atmosphere.
Right.
Does that lend itself to the game makers not making as good a games as they could because it's easier to envelop the person in it? So the games come out and they're not okay. For example, Battlefield 1 is an awesome single player game, and it makes you feel like you're there.
Right.
Those games don't come out very often, and you know it's a really good game when that can do that to you. You know, like Medal of Honor, the first Medal of Honor was one of those games when you landed on the beach in Normandy and bullets were whizzing by your head.
Yeah.
In the sound, I mean, you felt like you were there. One or two of the early Call of Duties were like that, but Battlefield 1 is like that. And like I said, you know it's a good game when it can make you feel like you're there. So VR will be able to make you feel like you're there, even if it's not a good game. So will that lend itself to that?
I think that's happened at the beginning, but it wasn't for the reason you're saying. What I've seen at the beginning, my opinion, watching all these folks on Twitch and everybody who got VR from the second it came out and watching them play and listening to their reactions, a lot of them, what's interesting, number one, is they spent all this money, set up their rooms for all this VR stuff. They streamed VR stuff for a couple weeks, and then they've never gone back to it, which kind of tells me what I need to know there about what's out there to really play with it. It just, the games out there right now seem to be very short On not all of them, but there's a lot of very short games that are kind of half baked. There's a lot of videos, if you watch some of them, where people are trying to load guns and they can't quite, and the graphics are kind of janky and it's just not that full experience yet. But what I will say is that I don't think you're going to see that continuing. I think people wanted to get to market first. They had headsets out there. They wanted to get a quick game out there, so they didn't spend as much time, and they got something out quick, and you still got that great experience, even on
that's
something
what
that was half baked.
That's what I was saying.
But now with the big developers getting into it, and they have between a 6 to 10 year programming time, development time for these big games, you're going to see this not only like a Battlefield experience, but you're going to add that into a VR world, and that's going to be breathtaking. That's going to be heart-pounding fear, because like you said, even without virtual reality, some of these games can totally pull you in. But if you add that full enveloping element to a game like that, I couldn't imagine.
I was going to say, I couldn't imagine playing Battlefield with virtual reality. I don't know. I mean, that would be absolutely amazing.
First person Rocket League.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Rocco, imagine how good we would be with VR headsets.
We would be totally worse.
Do you imagine how good would look?
Of course, I don't know if that's possible, if we can get worse.
No, we might get better.
We might get better.
There's no going down from here.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have enough trouble with my own reality, let alone playing reality.
Whoa! Did you see this? Your chat's against me. Ski Meister literally just said, when I've watched you two play Rocket League, I get the feeling you're carrying Das Geek. What did you pay yourself?
I love you, Ski.
That is unbelievable. I have never.
Can you imagine? Seriously though, Fradham has a good point. Can you imagine virtual reality with Rocket League as if you're like doing flips and spins like crazy people like Michael do, and you're flying across the map? You'd be like sick.
Yeah.
There's actually a way to try that.
What?
Like you can change your camera settings so it becomes first person.
Yeah.
And it is vomit inducing.
Yeah, that's great. Gee, that's what I want to play.
It's very hard. It's basically impossible to play the game at that point. And if even just doing the aerial stuff I do with ball cam off is enough to make you sick. Like just regular.
Are these reality games going to get to the point where somebody could probably have cardiac arrest playing these games? Or,
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
There's the amount of it engulfs you. Probably. Depending on how intense the game is, like a first-person shooter, it would be.
I suppose there's a warning thing on there as well when you use these games, isn't there? There have to be some.
There probably will be at some point when it gets to that point. Like right now, they're just like sandbox play around games.
Heather asked if Rocket League's on Linux. I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The only reason I started playing is because it was on Linux.
No tux, no bucks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
no tux, no bucks. There's
that's the new.
You're not always living by that, Rocco.
I'm not always living by that, but
I've heard Battlefield and all these games you keep mentioning.
Well, if you would get Battlefield 1 to work on Linux, I wouldn't have to boot into Windows.
I actually always use Linux for the past decade, and then PUBG came out.
Yeah. So you've been booting into Windows lately, huh?
No, because PUBG is incredibly buggy. It's a broken piece of crap. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not even kidding. Like it's broken. Like to the point where I haven't turned it on in like a week and a half just because it's so irritating.
Well, it's an insanely popular game right at the moment.
It is a fun game when it works. It just doesn't work a lot. Like there's a thing called flintstoning that was like invented by this game, and it's not a good thing. It's the textures don't load, and therefore everything looks like Flintstone graphics, and that means the doors don't load, so you can't get into the buildings to get any loot. It's just broken.
Well, if you look at my Steam friend list and say there's like 15, 20 people online, probably 18 are playing PUBG. I don't play it, but There's a ton of people playing it right now.
I mean, it is a fun game, even if it is broken. Like, it's still fun, especially the first-person version.
Yeah.
But Rocket League is it goes on sale significantly, so like you can get it down. Actually,
it was really cheap recently. It was on sale not that long, just in the last couple of weeks. I think it was pretty.
The
cheap.
lowest I've ever seen it was $12.
Yeah, I don't think it was quite that low this last time, but it was. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I saw you type in there, Rocco. It was. Yeah, it's about right. That's about what I think it was. Right within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's a good deal. It's normally like I think 25, 30. It's a really good game. It's worth it. Like, well, if you like frustrating games, it's awesome.
I don't think it's that frustrating though. I mean, well, that's because I'm no good at it. But
pretty much.
I don't find it. I think it's really if you're not a heavy gamer. What's interesting about Rocket League is you could be a complete beginner to gaming and still love the game. Mm-hmm. And if you're a pro, you're still going to love the game. If you're a pro gamer, you're going to love it. Like it almost is there for everybody. I mean, proof in the pudding, Rocco could play it.
See?
So it's open to all levels. But no, it is one of those unique games that I think everybody can play and enjoy. It does get frustrating when you actually want to be good at it. But if you don't take it serious, like Rocco.
Well, that's the thing. It can be very frustrating when you're trying to be good at it and you're failing miserably. But if you take it as a casual game, it can be really fun.
But you know what? A game like that where it's fun is I play Grid a lot, and you try so hard, and then if you start losing control and you hit a wall, hit a car, and by the time that you've done halfway around the track a few times, your car is so smashed, and you get to the point where the heck with it, you just purposely start smashing people. So that's the kind of game you'd want to do because you purposely hit stuff, instead of trying to. Have you ever played Grid?
No.
See, I'm a car guy, so I like, I get in there and I get a nice hopped up Mustang or a Charger or whatever, 1970s era, 67 or something like that. And I love them. I turn the speakers up because I love the muscle car sound and burning rubber and, all that stuff. So do drifting and, so if you like that kind of game, it's pretty cool and it's fast, but you talk about your blood getting up there. You do even with something like that because, it's unless you got steering wheel and brake pedals, a controller is the next best thing to play it on, but it's still it's pretty intense.
I used to play a game kind of like what you're talking about, and I forget.
Speed.
Was it Carmageddon? Was that what it was?
Oh my gosh!
I used to play that, and it was like the same kind of scenario where you just run into everybody and everything.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had that kind of violence in you, Rock.
Hey.
Well, it's the same thing. I was playing
a long time ago.
My Xbox. I was playing Mafia. My kids had bought me one of the Mafia games and stuff. So I started doing basically the storylines to get through to each level. And when I got through it, to the end, I decided to play it over again. So instead of going on there and playing the storyline again, half the time I'm running into cars, I'm stealing cars, I'm shooting somebody for no reason. It's just, I don't know. It's just maybe it's just being cynical or whatever it is. I don't know. It's more fun sometimes just to turn around and do stuff you're not supposed to do. I don't know. In some of those games, maybe it's just
Rocco,
too.
Yep.
Rocco, what are you using at the moment? What OS?
Solus Budgie.
Oh, you've got Solus Budgie on there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And after that second install, everything seems to be working fine, with the exception of, I did notice that, like I said when I first started the stream, that my icons are not in the system tray where they should be of the running apps. So I have, my network and my sound, but any of the running apps like Telegram or Steam, anything that sits in the system tray as an app indicator is not there. There's none of them there. So I don't know what's wrong with that.
Simple Screen Recorder does, I know. That sits in the system tray. For me.
System tray issue, probably.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe I gotta just re-add that applet. Maybe I'll try it.
What about your Zoom issue? What's happening there?
Well, what I did was I downloaded it from the website itself, and Chuck, and I can't remember his last name, he's sent me a message on YouTube a couple of weeks ago about it and told me how he got it to run on Solus. So I downloaded it.
Seen that.
And I did it exactly the way he said, and it runs fine. So the only
It's a
downfall to it is that I have to. I didn't yet create a shortcut for it, so I have it sitting in I have a folder for all of my app images or like portable programs that I have it sitting in there. So I got to go get it. And
Menu Libre is best for that. Menu Libre, I find that best on. That works pretty well.
I'm gonna have to install that. I don't know. Is that installed in Solus?
No, it's in the software center though.
It's in the software center, and you're welcome.
Do you work on that, Michael?
Well, technically, Josh wouldn't let me, but I spent 3 weeks trying to force him to do it.
Right.
Because I'm not a part of the team, so it wouldn't be like, they needed someone to manage it continuously, not just someone to, submit and go. And so after convincing Josh, he put it in.
There we go. There it is. I think he did.
There's a video on my YouTube channel that explains Menu Libre and how it's awesome and why you should use it.
I think he did mention something about Menu Libre, but when I didn't see it, I didn't go try to search for it. So yeah, I can put a shortcut in for that, and that'll be awesome.
Yeah. So
Menu Libre is awesome because it also supports jump lists and stuff too.
Did you download Tarball? Was it a tar.gz or whatever?
Yeah, you got to go to the site, and it offers your deb files and all that, and you have to go to the for the Linux distributions, you have to go to the other. And it'll give you a zip file for it.
Did you have to navigate in the terminal and run the /install? Was it? Is that what you did?
No, you don't even have to. It doesn't really get installed. You just run it from the. You just extract it and just run it. So
I just run it. Oh, okay.
I think it's the Zoom. There's a couple files in there, but I think it's the Zoom launcher that actually runs it then.
So it's got its own launcher and it just launches on its own.
Yep.
A bit like Etcher did, yeah. Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
That's
good.
It's a compiled binary that you use. Like there's some games that do that too. So like Xenotic is a game that you when you download it, it's a tarball, and then you just run the binary.
Yeah, what he said.
It's always handy.
Yeah, this is a formatless binary. Usually it's the name of the program, and then everything is contained. Everything it needs as a dependency is contained inside that download, which is good as far as like, well, it's good that it exists. Like it's better to have that than not have anything.
Well, either way, it works pretty good. So.
You can use Firefox nightly like that too, which is weird, but
Well, that was one thing that we were talking about it on Telegram earlier. My dad was talking about switching to Solus, and one of the things he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to use the new version of Firefox because he's not going to go to 57 because of the whole losing of his add-ons. So. And there was also some sites out there that were saying that if you upgraded to 55, you would be able to downgrade to 54, but some of your settings wouldn't be saved in your profile. So he's leery about upgrading to 55 even, and he wanted to stay on either the 52 ESR or 54, and Solus has 55 already. So I guess there's a snap maybe for the older versions of Firefox that he could run.
There's a snap for the ESR. That's basically
there's a snap for the ESR. Okay.
Yeah,
now running that is not any less secure than 55, correct?
So Solus is good.
Well, there was a little silence there. I mean.
Well, yes. There's going to be security issues. There are going to be security issues eventually. I mean, is it necessarily bad in every way? The 52 version, 54, is probably not a good thing to do if you're going to stick to it. Like if you require the legacy add-ons,
he requires them.
Then 52 ESR is the best one because it's going to have the longest release support, and I would say it's not going to be that long though. Like it's not like an LTS or anything. It's like a year. So it's probably got about like 7-8 months left before full support, and it might go into maintenance release after that. But as soon as the ESRs are gone, they're gone. Like they just stop being supported. So eventually, it will be a problem. Like we're guaranteed. So
isn't there anything else you can use with these add-ons? Like, isn't there anything else? What is there an alternative add-on in Google or something like that?
Well, he definitely won't go to Google. He won't go to Chrome. And he likes the idea of, and he's actually being frustrated by Firefox removing a lot of the about config settings, like more or less locking it down from what it used to be. And he does a lot of, I mean, he's like super private with everything, and he changes a lot of the about config settings, and that's why he wants to stay on Firefox, which you don't have access to that in Chrome or Chromium. And he has multiple security add-ons, and they'll be lost if he upgrades, and he just doesn't want to do that. So I think even if it's only a year, he would probably want to wait that. He was going to want to wait for as long as he possibly can.
I'm pretty sure Chromium has something similar to the about config, doesn't it, Mike? Chromium has some similar about config thing.
I mean, it has an about config, but just because it's not going to give you the same kind of control.
Right.
It's not called the about config. It's called something else, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is the about config in Firefox is so. I mean, pretty much it has every setting possible in Firefox is in there, and if you research it, and he's done hours of research on every about config setting there is, and has it all written down on paper of each setting and what he uses and what it does, and he's like really detailed in that area, and he doesn't want to lose all that.
I mean, I understand that. Like, there are certain
changing that though. I mean, what would be because
it's outdated. It's incredibly old. These APIs are super old. Like they have bit rot basically, and there are certain things that you can do in Firefox that are fantastic and dangerous. So it's a security thing. To use web extensions, you're adding an extra security layer. So you need to install an application that can integrate with your desktop with an extension. With add-ons in Firefox, you just automatically get that access to your desktop, and you can change whatever you want. There are malicious things that has happened throughout the years of Firefox that people have accidentally installed an add-on that they didn't realize could wreck them, and it did. Whereas in Chrome, they're using the web extension structure, which is not made by Chrome or Google. It's a collaborative thing, community thing, but they're using it, and because by using it, they have the ability to have that layer separation, and that's pretty much what Firefox is doing. A lot of people are saying Firefox is just copying Chrome. It's like, well, Chrome doesn't make web extensions, so it's like they're just saying we like this extension structure, we're going to use it. So I can understand why people have frustrations with losing some add-ons, but and Firefox 55 has issues where some of the add-ons don't work, or some of the add-ons are not as efficient. Firefox 55 also has electrolysis, so
which he never turned on because
he couldn't.
Well, I guess you could turn it on in 54 in some way.
You can't turn it on. If he's using these ancient add-ons, it guarantees you can't use it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He couldn't because he's using the legacy add-ons, because it either isn't compatible with that, or it will break the add-on. So
no, automatically, if you have one add-on that's legacy, the electrolysis shuts itself off.
No, there you go. So he's not able to even use that. And I don't know. He said to me today, well, how fast do I need to be?
He doesn't care. It's as far as security wise, if he doesn't install anything weird, and he just uses what he has, and he doesn't care about the speed of the browser's page loading, and he just wants these customizations, he probably will be fine for the entire length of the ESR. If he's not very demanding as far as like what he gets to use, and he just wants to like, this is what I have, I just want to keep and be done with it.
That's pretty much what he is.
And the ESR will probably be fine. 52 will probably be fine, but eventually it might not be. Like, I don't know when they're going to kill the ESR, and if they do, once they do, you could still use it, but it might be a dangerous thing to do.
Right.
Like, I think is
there no workaround for this? For these extensions, there's no workaround at all?
No. Not right now.
Yes and no, but mostly no.
Yes, meaning you have to be a hacker.
Yes,
yeah,
you have to be a programmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the normal person, there's not a workaround.
Today's slowest browser is still how many hundreds of times faster than AOL's dial-up from when it first came out on the internet. You know, I mean, we forget those days.
It's ridiculous, but in that sense. But like, for example, with an add-on for, you know, okay, there's an add-on I used to use called copy link name or copy link text or something like that. And basically, all it did is that you right-click a link, and instead of copying your URL, it copied the content of the link on the page. And it was actually incredibly useful, and it seems like it wouldn't be that important. Like, it's a frivolous thing. Incredibly useful. Like, once you start using it, you'll get just used to it and be really mad when you couldn't use it. Well, that's a legacy add-on. And it broke in 55. It was possible to still use it in 54, but it broke in 55. But the thing that was okay about it is that because it's a simple add-on, it was replaced within like about a month or so, and you can get the web extension version of the same feature now. So that kind of add-on is definitely possible to very quickly switch over. There are other add-ons that are going to take forever or never happen. So, for example, NoScript is a security add-on for turning off JavaScript. JavaScript is not necessarily bad as what people think it is, but there are some things that could be bad if you go to certain websites, blah, blah. It is kind of a problem. But some people will use NoScript to just turn it off completely and then like only whitelist certain sites, which is fine. If they want to do that, that's fine. NoScript is a legacy add-on. And that is an incredibly complex add-on. So a regular user or even like a beginner programmer would have no chance at moving that over. But the guy who develops it is currently making a web extension version for it. It will just take like a couple months more, like at least another month, maybe 2. He says he plans on getting it out in 57, but he can't really guarantee it right now. So like there are people who are currently in situations where like NoScript doesn't work, FlashGot doesn't work, made by the same dude, and they don't work in 55, but they did work in 54. And the reason is because the transition is so drastic that he just hasn't had time to do it. And he's had like a year and a half to move it over. It's that much of an effort. And there are other extensions like Down the Mall and tab groups where the developer said, it's so much of an effort, I don't care. Screw it. Let it die.
Yeah, he uses one of the I forget what it's called. It allows you to customize Firefox, and there's so many settings inside of it. Like the tabs and the
Beyond Astralis?
No, it's
Tab Mix Plus?
No. I can't for the life of me, I can't think of it at the moment, but it's like one of the most popular add-ons, but it's a legacy add-on, and the guy said it's not going to be made for the new thing. So
Beyond Astralis is a thing that modifies the interface and stuff like that. It might be something like that, or like Firefox, like there's something that's called like a Firefox, like Firefox or something. It was like it turned
classic theme restore.
Yeah.
It's one of the top-rated add-ons.
Because I think Zeb mentioned something about that. There was an add-on for changing your themes or doing something, tweaking stuff on there.
So this thing is amazing. I mean, it has so many settings in there. You can change pretty much everything on Firefox. Tab colors, everything. And it's one of those one, and like I said, it's one of the most top-rated add-ons for changing your appearance, and it's done.
Yeah.
The guy's not gonna port it over, so
he can't. It is impossible. Not only that, even if he wants to, it's impossible. Like Classic Theme Restore and Beyond Australis modify the Zool, and Mozilla Firefox is not going to use Zool anymore. So once the Zool API is gone, it's just those are dead.
And there's no alternative. There's no what is the new thing that. So there's nothing in the new system that could be modified like that.
No.
Actually, the one I was thinking of was theme and font size changer. That's the one, because I remember I was talking about being able to change some colors and bring the fonts up bigger. That's the one. I just did a quick search, and that's the one I think Zeb referenced. It's not the same thing that you guys are talking about.
Well, Firefox is making it possible to customize the UI. You can have a light mode, a dark mode. You can customize the way the tabs are displayed and all kinds of stuff. They are making it more customizable by default. It's just they're not making it that customizable because Zool is going to be gone. And it's actually a good thing that Zool's gone, because Zool is incredibly clunky and not bloated, but like it's a heavy framework. So it is kind of good that they're getting rid of it. It's also kind of not. So it's like you're losing add-ons, sure. You're going to gain a ridiculous amount of speed. Like the browser itself is going to load 10 times faster. It's going to be a lot smoother. It's going to crash less, like a lot less actually. Like there are so many benefits, and then of course there's going to be cons too. So it is unfortunate that these not all add-ons can be ported. It's just
Michael, were you talking about now the one you were talking about before with the tabs and stuff? Would that be Classic Theme Restore? Because that talks about changing just about everything on here. Looking at
that's the one Rocco was talking about. That is one of the biggest ones.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
because the one thing that I have a little bit of a gripe with, even trying to tweak what they gave you in here, was, and again, it might be the actual provider of the website or whatever. As an example, Netflix. If you go to Netflix to log in, it's got the fill-in boxes in the forms to log in, as an example, are blacked out. But the text is such a dark gray you can't hardly read it. Or on vice versa, on some other sites I've gone to log in, it's a white box and the text is just about white, where you can't see it. And you can't. It seems like you can't change that stuff in here, and that gets frustrating with it.
Because you're using a dark theme.
Well, I am using a dark theme, but I've actually tried going to a light theme just to see if it would change it. It doesn't seem to affect certain sites, though, is what I'm saying. They still tend to load
the theme. Okay, so here's the problem. When I'm saying a dark theme, I'm not talking about a browser like a Firefox theme.
Oh, you're talking about my OS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on the theme, it has to support certain features. The theme itself has to compensate for this. That's unfortunate, but that's a problem with Zool. One of the issues is that the website renderer is also the UI renderer. So some of the stuff they do in the UI is being kind of tweaking and manipulating in the website rendering, which is one of the biggest problems Firefox has had for a very long time. Like you could go back and look at the bug reports for the dark theme issue. That's been around for like a decade.
Yes.
Like it is a problem.
It's ridiculous.
They are aware it's a thing, and they cannot do anything about it. They're like, the only option, and if you look at the bug report, the only option we have is to remove Zool. At the time, when it was first asked, it was ridiculous. Now there is something to replace it that actually makes it possible. So in the future, that won't be an issue. It's just like right now, it absolutely is an issue. And there are things to do to get rid of it. I have plans, a to-do list to make a video explains how to do it. There are 3 ways to do it. One of them is a guaranteed, absolutely will work at all websites, no matter what. But it's a difficult thing to do. You have to run a GTK environment variable prior to loading the browser. So that's what I do when I'm running my system. Like that's how I always run my browser. difficult. It's just like if I explain it here, it's difficult to understand without like where to put the different commands and where to put the different structures and like the variables and stuff. But it's just basically you just copy and paste it as long as you put it in the right spot. It'll be fine.
So we can expect this this video when Firefox 60 comes out.
What?
Firefox 60.
What?
No rush, just hurry up.
How dare you? How dare you? 74.
Well, since Rocco interrupted with the joke, I have to go because it's like 1:30 here. I've got to get sleep.
1:30, dude.
Yeah. But you all continue having fun, and you got to have me on your show, Rocco. You're
Ryan, thanks for showing up. The view count is just going to explode tonight. So I appreciate you showing up, right?
Thank you all for having me. I had an absolute blast.
See you later, Ryan.
It's fun.
See
you, man.
Good talking.
So 74 is when it's coming.
All right.
Well, to be fair, my first time I said I was going to do that was let's see. I think it was either March or April
of 2010.
Of 2016.
Okay.
Like actually,
listen,
legitimately a very long time.
The hereafter, Michael. You know what I mean?
So I'm going to do it.
Okay, you're going to do it.
Can't tell you when.
Sometime.
I can explain it in a Telegram or email or something if you want, but it's like it's not difficult. Like it requires menu libre and it requires putting in the correct variable and the right structure. Essentially, what you're going to do is tell GTK to ignore the default global GTK that you set up and use a specific theme for Firefox. It could be whatever you want. It just needs to be something that supports this issue. Numix, for example, supports it perfectly fine. I think Arc does, but I'm not sure about that one. I think it does, though.
Well, you know, in this, getting back to with Chrome, another issue I ran into today was, which started yesterday, was getting back to the computer when I was trying to order it. I kept having issues, so I thought, okay, maybe it's their server. When I called them, they said, no, we're not aware of any problem. And that's why I keep 3 different browsers on here. I have Chrome, Firefox, and Opera, because typically I'll try one or the other, and I hadn't tried that yet. And my son, I was talking to him about it, and he goes, well, I know I've done that, and I've switched browsers or whatever. So I thought, for the heck of it, let me open up Firefox and see if it, and sure enough, boom, 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 no problem in Firefox. So, everybody talks about how wonderful they think Chrome is, and it does have a lot of, I think, positives over many browsers, but it's far from perfect. And is it a Linux thing? I don't think so, because I've still run into the same thing on Windows or whatever. I thought, well, maybe I just didn't clear the cache out or empty out whatever. Maybe something's getting garbaged up in there, so I go through everything, try to clean everything up, because the one thing about Chrome versus Firefox, there was a nice little cache add-on in there that would clean out. You could use it. There's an eraser add-on too, but the problem is I noticed the more add-ons you put in, and maybe this is where it's different, obviously, where your standpoint is, Rocco, with your dad, because he's doing the config changes. But if you're just doing a simple add-in drop in and more add-ins, sometimes they bog it down too. So it's I think part of it too is because everybody wants to, and me especially included, is we're getting a little lazy where you want to just click a button and have instant success instead of doing right click and then go on there and take an extra click or two. And it's the speed thing we've all gotten used to. But that's what I was saying. It seems like each browser still has its own little quirk somewhere along the line. And it's almost getting to the point where which one does this for you when you're doing this, and this that does it, and it just would be nice that if there was one that worked for everything. And I don't know, that's probably never going to happen.
Firefox could be, it's losing these add-ons for sure, but one of the things that it's bringing is support for Chrome add-ons. So it's not automatically, but like, the web extension protocol is what's going to be used in 57 exclusively. The web extension protocol is already exclusive in Chrome. So those extensions could theoretically be easily ported over depending on what the extension does. And there's an extension called Stylus Stylus, and it was regionally ported over to Firefox because he said, well, it's using web extensions. That makes it a lot easier for me to port it. So yeah, sure, I'll do it. Same thing with Tamper Monkey. Both of them switched over. Like there's a lot of benefits to this happening. So it's, you know, it's weighing the pros and cons type of thing. And Firefox has a lot of features that are so like solid, as in like core fundamental features. A lot of people don't even use them, but they're so good, and they're also very innovative. And Chrome is kind of innovative on the back end, but they compromise their efficiency and their resource usage and their overall security for speed. And they do, like, it's kind of like, well, you can argue whether having to install something in your system in order to connect to your browser is a good thing or not. In some cases it's good, some cases bad, but the fact that in order to like keep every single tab in Chrome is a separate process, and people go, that's great, it's a security thing. Not really. I mean, the process structure is not necessarily a sandbox. There is some sandboxing, but that doesn't make it the same. But by doing so, you make your browser 10 times heavier, like just absurdly heavy. And you have no option to stop that. Like, it's just that heavy, and that's what it is. Whereas Firefox's, the electrolysis structure is the browser process, then a mega process that's multi-threaded. So you can have many processes as you want that your computer can handle, but no more. Like, it's not going to force you. You can say my computer can handle 10 processes, and you just put 10 at the max, and that's all it does. So it gives you a lot of control. At the same time, it's also super fast. So that's why the Firefox 55 compared to 54 and 55, they're like, it's super faster. It's like 3 to 4 times faster just between that one version switch. And 57 is going to be even faster because the way they're changing the whole structure from Zool to this new I really don't remember the framework they're using, but it's going to be much better. But they're keeping most of the core features, which is fantastic. Like Firefox has the best bookmark managers, period. Like nothing compares. Yeah, nothing compares. And like they're even building more improved features in the bookmark manager for the future, because they're building innovative features like the container tabs, which are amazing, and I'm using it right now. So it's awesome.
What do you mean?
55 first came out, was I was still, and that's one of the things that sent me back over to Chrome, was I was having a lot of crashes, and I'm slowly starting to use it a little bit more again. But again, what's driving me nuts is those form issues with the theme coloring. But you know, sometimes it makes it rather difficult to work with. Now the other thing too is because I have an eBay store, when I go to run my print manager over here, it doesn't like, for whatever reason, it prints differently than Chrome does, and it doesn't like my thermal printer. I noticed that today. So I had to go back to Chrome to print it. But, you know, so if I can work through some of this stuff, it'd be fine. But I notice even with Chrome lately, I've had a couple of crashes where if I'm either opening up too much or moving around through the environment too fast, all of a sudden you get the, oh snap, you know, something went wrong, reload, and then you'll get the, oops, do you want to restore whatever you're on kind of a message. But so I am not quite sure what's causing that, if it's maybe something on my end that's causing it in the browsers, because I've got a relatively fast machine, so in my opinion I wouldn't think it should have a problem. But then maybe that is the problem, is that it's a speed issue where it's going to be too fast, you know. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, it's probably not an issue. It's more of a compatibility issue, I would bet, and I doubt it's a performance problem. I think it's more of your printer being not necessarily compatible with certain aspects of different browsers.
Yeah, see, Chrome, it works perfectly fine, and I love the way it works. It's very simple and it's easy. But when I went to use it in Firefox, which is actually the first time I did that today, You know, it brought up literally the same print window as if you went into the, you know, you brought up your printer from your OS just to go in there, maybe tweak some settings or whatever. So it brought up its own print manager, where in Chrome, it's within Chrome. It's the whatever.
It's a web print thing.
Chrome. Yeah.
So
and that works better for whatever
so
reason.
Michael, what problem am I having? Everything's freezing today on Firefox. Everything's working fine on Google Chrome. So what's the issue there? I mean, it comes native in Solus, Budgie. So I don't know.
Do you have, when you say freezing, is it the things are not loading and there's this little spinning loading symbol? Or is it like stuff just doesn't run?
Everyone's video is going black and white. The voices aren't in sync. And like then once no, because I'm using Google Chrome. I had to switch to Google Chrome because it was just
that's a weird connection issue. Like, I'm not sure why Firefox is not utilizing your connection properly then, because that only happens when there's like a buffering problem, and it's possible that Firefox is not handling it that well. I'll go ahead and admit I'm not using Firefox to run the WebRTC either. I'm using Vivaldi for that. Firefox does it well. It's just not as reliable because the WebRTC infrastructure is one of the things they're heavily rebuilding in the release for 57. So it could be that kind of a bug, that it's just like this particular feature is not that common, but I don't know, it's hard to explain the sense of the issue that it could create, because the WebRTC protocol is like a peer-to-peer thing. So I don't know.
Well, there's two things that I have with Chrome that don't work. There's two websites, and I can't remember what they were off the top of my head, but there's one or two websites out there that will not work in Chrome. Like they won't show up the boxes where you need to like log in. They just won't even be there. There's nothing there, and it'll say like whatever, log in, and there's nothing there. But I can go to that same website in Firefox, and it shows up perfect. So I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that's very rare. But there are one or two sites that work that way, that I have to actually open up Firefox to get it to work.
That is an interesting issue.
Well, I just had another thing too. You mentioned Chrome with Amazon. I going into my Amazon store, and I bought this widescreen monitor. It's a 3517. It's a Dell. And I thought, okay, maybe it's something in the resolution settings or whatever. I tried playing with it. But you know how if you go in and you look at a product, and then it'll give you different choice boxes for different, basically if it's a 256 gig, let's say if you're looking at a hard drive, or it's distorting it like a website. You know how a website poorly built could be, where everything would be overlapping and you can't make out what it is. I never had that issue before until I put this monitor on here. And then, but if I go into Firefox, it's fine. So there's something in Chrome that liken something with this new monitor, and I don't know for sure what it is. I'm not going to change all my settings or screw with the monitor just because of one website not acting right.
That sounds like an issue with Amazon's CSS on ultra wide monitors for Chrome implementation. Like, I'm actually a web designer and developer, so this kind of thing happens a lot, like where you're designing something and you can't really test everything because you don't have an ultra wide or something, or you don't have a particular device, so you can't really test like how it displays on that. It could be that, like it could be something like that, and also there are certain times where you can make code work beautifully in Firefox on an ultra wide, and in the same code just the pixels are slightly wrong, and you gotta adjust it for Chrome. Right. All this other stuff. Like there's a lot of annoyances with web designing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it could be something. It's more than likely something like that.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on Vivaldi, actually?
Mine or Joe? I think Joe uses Vivaldi at some point, didn't you?
I did when it first came out, but it was still a work in progress. I haven't tried it again recently, and I've been thinking about it because I know you spoke a lot about it, and a couple other people have, and I've been thinking to take a look at it again. But when they first kind of were releasing it, it was still early stages, and it had some issues.
I'll be back, guys.
I use Vivaldi as my secondary. Firefox is my main, and Vivaldi's the second, because Vivaldi is a hybrid of Chrome and Firefox. Like a lot of the things that were good about Opera is because they were very similar to Firefox. Like Opera, they were old Opera, the original Opera. Like they realized like there are certain options that Firefox had that were really good, and they're like, we'll just copy those. Like the bookmark manager in the old Opera had pretty much everything that Firefox did that made it good. So when someone said they used Opera, I was like, yeah, makes sense. It's fine. Now Opera is nowhere near how good it was, but Vivaldi is like 85% there. Like
yeah, it's getting there.
Yeah, they are so close. It's currently usable right now. It's very good. It's got a lot of cool features. The jump menu is really cool. Like there's a ton of good stuff. It's just not quite to the level I want certain features, like the bookmark manager, like 95% there. It's so close, but it's just like there's just one thing that just drops, and it's like I can't use it now because it doesn't detect like a lot of the features that my bookmarks are specified for different things. And in Firefox, it's beautifully like compatible in every version. And in Opera, it worked fine, but the old Opera worked fine. So Vivaldi is fantastic. It's just not quite there. I say it's definitely the better Chromium-based browser, like overall.
All right, so it's getting late, so everybody gets a last word.
Tuxdigital.com.
Joe?
Linux Hopper.
I mean, it could have been more than one word. I was just.
You said a word, so
you get a last comment. What's your last comment for the night?
Oh, use KDE Neon.
Use KDE Neon. Joe, what's your last comment of the night?
Promote Linux and change everybody off, and that you can't get them over.
Wait, you can't change it now.
I can't. Because I'm making new rules. We're on the fly. I'm gonna do a stream on Sunday for my news thing, news show, my news podcast.
What time?
It's 1 p.m. Eastern.
Well, I won't make it, but anybody in the channel listening, what's the channel?
Tuxdigital.com.
There you go. Tuxdigital.com. Sunday at 1.
It's my granddaughter's 1-year-old birthday party, so I don't know if I'll be able to peel myself away for that riveting show, but I'll watch the recording.
But there's it's a weekly thing too. It's a news. I make a news podcast that is just news and nothing else. It's just here's point by point. Here's what's good.
Is that weekly?
It is so far. It is for this second half of it is, yes.
Okay.
It wasn't at one point, but
there's your one word for the next 6 months.
That's right. I'll come back and I'll have I'll just record my last words next time, and that way
there you go.
Even longer.
All right, everybody have a great night.
You too. See you later, guys.
See you.